We've all come back from a session eager to see those photos on a bigger display, dive into Lightroom, and you can't resist opening up that one photo. That one photo you said to yourself as soon as you took it, this is a banger. That one photo that was in your mind the entire session. But after hours of editing, that photo that you thought was a banger doesn't turn out as good as you envisioned. The photo just looks dull, your subject doesn't pop, and after hours of different edits, nothing is working. If this has happened to you, then this is a video for you. In today's video, I'm gonna show you guys some tricks, hacks if you will, or easy things I do in Lightroom to give my photos that extra sauce I want and overall level up my portraits. So let's get right into it. The first little hack that I do to every single one of my portraits is to create separation between the subject and the background. Now, you're probably wondering, Stefano, you already have separation between the background and your subject. What are you talking about? And while that is true, I do shoot most of my portraits at an aperture below f2.8 to get that blurry background. However, depending on the lighting and the colors in the scene, sometimes my model can blend in. And what I mean by blending in is that even if the model is dead smack in the middle of the frame, the viewer's eyes are still drawn all over the place and not focused on what we want them to actually focus on. So one thing I like to do is to create a mask selecting the background so we can create that separation. Lightroom's AI is extremely powerful in detecting your subject and creating masks, so we're going to take advantage of that. I'm going to click on our masking window and then I'm going to create a new select subject mask. Once the AI has detected our subject and has masked it, we're going to go ahead and click on invert over here, and now we have a perfect selection of the background. From here, I head into the effects drop down menu over here, and then I choose SL background separation. These effects are available in the description down below if you want to download them for yourself, but essentially what this is doing is decreasing the exposure a little bit, dropping the texture, dropping the clarity, decreasing the dehaze slider. What this is going to do is blur the background a little more and also create that separation. So if we toggle the mask on or off, you can see the difference that this adjustment made. This is such a huge adjustment and changes the look of the entire photo. If you ever shot with like a 24-70 at 70 millimeters or like a 85, the compression you get with those lenses, this is like adding that compression. Now these effects are all just starting points. Every photo is different and they need to be adjusted accordingly. But the cool thing is that all these effects have their own amount slider, which can be used to lessen or greater the effect while keeping all the adjustments relative. Depending on the photo and the lighting in the photo, I'll leave the exposure down to create that separation, or sometimes I can even create that separation by increasing the exposure. And the same thing goes for the texture, clarity, and even the sharpness slider. If I want to increase the background blur or the bokeh in the photo, I can just change the texture or clarity slider accordingly. This is something I do if I shot my model a little too close to a wall or I didn't leave enough distance between my subject and the background. This is easily one of those things that can look fake if you overdo it, so make sure you pay attention to detail. Now, if we did all that and my model still doesn't pop from the background, we can create a new mask, select our subject again. We're not going to invert it this time, and we can just increase the exposure a little bit on our subject. In the case for this photo, because she is backlit by the sun, I'm actually going to do something that will make her pop from the background even more. We're going to create a new mask and we're going to select our brush. While we have our brush, we're going to make sure we're at 100 feather, 100 flow, and 100 density, and then we're just going to go around her hair and we're just going to select or paint over the edges of her hair. You also want to make sure that this auto mask checkbox is checked. Now that we have the edges of our hair selected, we're just going to go ahead and increase our exposure just a little bit. Anywhere from like 0.20, again, you don't want to overdo it. We'll do 0.26, and you can even add a little bit of temperature to the warm side. So I can do about 10 here, and if we check this on or off or toggle it on or off, you can see the difference that it made. This will make the edges of her hair glow and add that extra element of separation. Along with making my subject stand out, my next trick is to make certain facial features pop out as well. Features like the model's eyes are a good example. For the model's eyes, I'm gonna create a new mask. I'm gonna select our brush, and in the effect, we're gonna select SL Iris Enhance. We're gonna go ahead and zoom into our shot here, and we're just going to paint in a little U or the bottom of the iris. Again, this is one of those things that you can easily overdo, so what I suggest is to zoom out of your portrait because it'll be easier to tell if you overdid it or not. For this portrait, 0.50 looks perfect. After that, I'm going to create a new mask. Again, select our brush tool, and then we're going to go down to our effects and select our SLI/teeth whitening. We're going to zoom back into our portrait, and we're just going to paint over the white parts of her eye on both sides, just to whiten them up a little bit. And then if my photo has catch lights, which are these little white reflections of light in her eye, I'm actually gonna paint those in as well. Making all these eye adjustments help make the model's eyes pop and look a little more alive. That's it for the eyes, but I still have a few more features that I wanna make pop. So we're gonna create a new mask. We're gonna click on our brush, and we're gonna zoom into her face here. And we're gonna paint over her eyebrows, her eyelashes. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect because we're just adding detail. We're not gonna be changing up the color or anything. And then we're also gonna do her lipstick, the edges of her lipstick, just to refine that edge a little bit. Once I've painted those in, I'm just gonna increase the texture and clarity slider, play around with it a little bit, but usually whatever I set the clarity at, I usually double that with my texture slider. To make it easy, I'm just gonna slap on my SL Enhance Details effect. If we toggle this effect off and on, you can see that it really helped us refine the edges that we painted in. You can see this especially with her lipstick down here. Now, if we toggle everything we've done so far, including the background separation and making her eyes pop, you can see that the difference is like night and day. The portrait looks so much better now. Now, I've been editing in Lightroom for years now, and there's one tool that I have never used until recently, and that's the Luminance tool in the HSL tab. Luminance increases the brightness of certain pixels. So in this case, if I increase the luminance of the blue channel, you can see that the color blue in the photo, or all the parts that are blue in the photo, get brighter, or if I slide the slider to the left, get darker. You can see all the luminance adjustments I've made on this photo, and if I toggle this on and off, it's like a night and day difference. So let me show you what effect luminance has on your image and how I use it. We'll head over to the other photo I want to edit here. This one here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm going to reset it. With every portrait, my main priority is the subject's face. Is it properly exposed? Is it in focus? So because this photo is already reset, the first thing I'm gonna do is up the exposure until the model's face is properly exposed. From there, I can use the luminance tool to balance out our exposure. So for example, if I grab the green slider and just start cranking this, I can probably go all the way, and you can see how much of a difference that made. You can see that the greens just look dead and dull, and then we toggle this back on, and you can see that the colors, they're much brighter and still full of contrast, giving us that punchy look we want. One thing to note is that the orange and yellow slider will almost always affect the colors in your model's skin, regardless of skin color. If you look, the only adjustments I've made to this photo so far is the initial exposure adjustment and our luminance adjustment. And if we just look at the before and after, it's a huge difference. This is with the luminance adjustments, and this is without the luminance adjustments. And we haven't even touched any other adjustments in Lightroom. I'm just gonna quickly interrupt here to tell you guys that the majority of people who watch my content aren't subscribed, which is why I'm gonna tell you to subscribe now, because I'm giving you guys all my secret editing tips here. So it would mean a lot if you guys take this time to scroll down, hit that subscribe button if you guys haven't already, to continue seeing great content like this. let's get back to the video. The next trick I do to most of my portraits, if I'm not skin retouching them in Photoshop or the client didn't pay for skin retouching, is to do a quick little retouch in Lightroom using my skin retouch effect. So all I have to do is create a new mask, select our brush, and under effect, we're gonna change this to SL skin retouch. We're gonna zoom into our photo here, maybe zoom out a little bit to about here. And we're just gonna paint basically her face. Once we painted it in, we can disable this overlay, and if I toggle this mask on and off, you can see the difference it made to her skin. This effect decreases your clarity to -40, increases your texture to 40, and also adds in a little bit to your whites, just because I found that if you're doing just the clarity slider and texture slider alone, it darkens the exposure a little bit on the selection. Now, if you didn't know, texture affects the smaller, medium-sized details in your photo. So things like the texture in your model's skin, or even my facial hair would be considered those smaller, medium-sized details. The clarity slider affects bigger size details, but also has a greater effect overall because it affects hundreds of pixels at a time. Reducing clarity like we did here is gonna soften our model's skin, but then adding that texture in is gonna add in some of that texture from our model's skin that the clarity slider may have removed, essentially retouching our model's skin. When using this effect, you want to adjust your amount slider to whatever seems realistic, but in this case, I think it looks fine, and the last thing I want to do is start removing pores and wrinkles and freckles, because that's when it's going to start to look fake. Depending on the photo though, sometimes I don't use a mask, and instead, I apply that effect to the entire photo. This reduces the overly sharpened look that we get from digital cameras nowadays that I've come to hate. That's why if you zoom into her eye here, you can kind of tell that it's not in focus anymore like it used to be, and that's because I added grain to again get rid of that digital super sharp look. Okay, and for the last hack and the last step to my editing process, I like to get rid of any eyesores. And how do I do this? Well, the first thing I need to do is sit back and analyze the image for a couple minutes or so. What I'm looking for is anything in the background that sticks out that actually pulls my attention from the main focus to it. For me right now, this is this harsh line created by this building behind the trees. I'll show you right here if you can't see. This line right here sticks out, this telephone pole, this train car, and even the edge of this building here is all sticking out. This right here, and the edges of these leaves are kind of sticking out a little bit. So I want to remove all those. Now I'm not actually going to remove all these. Instead, I'm going to create a new mask. I'm going to select our brush. I'm going to go under our effect here and click on our remove eyesores. And what I'm going to do is basically paint over all these distractions here that are pulling the viewer's eyes away from the actual focus of the image. And basically what this is going to do is kind of soften up those edges to make them a little bit less distracting. So if I toggle this on and off, you can actually see the difference that this made. Depending on the shoot and how bad it is, something like this telephone pole I would actually remove, but in this case I think I kind of want it in the photo and it suits the vibe for the shoot. And there you go, those are my 5 tricks, hacks, whatever you want to call them, things I do in Lightroom that make my portraits 10 times better. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.